first week. Yeah, he's down there 12 weeks out of it. So he's got a pretty good gig going on there, dude.
Just comfortable with the mayor. He should be here in a second. The mayor got held up at his other job, so
I see.
he'll be here in a minute, he said. So if we can wait a couple.
I just know what.
You just seen him walking? Oh, good.
That's pretty great.
Hey, Chris.
Okay, this came in. So we need to read this one aloud. Just this one. This came in 4:30, right? Okay. Ready? Streaming.
Call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone put their mics on?
Could the clerk please call the roll of the council?
Denny Bell,
Here.
Curtis Shears,
Here.
David Bishop,
Here.
Craig Gray,
Here.
Todd Rose.
Here.
We have a quorum tonight. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. That motion passes. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
So
moved.
move. I'll second.
Any discussion? That'll be a roll call vote.
Bell,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Rolfson.
Yep.
Shears.
Yes.
Motion passes. Then we have a public hearing regarding an amendment, or we do not have a public hearing regarding an amendment to ordinance rezoning certain property. The planning and zoning did not make a recommendation at their last meeting. They tabled it. And by state law, we need a recommendation from planning and zoning before we can hold a public hearing and take action on it. So that will be rescheduled for probably our May meeting. Then we have a public hearing regarding a request to vacate South Street between 6th Street and 7th Street. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Motion to open the public hearing passes. Have we received any oral or written objections?
Yes, I believe we received 4 written objections, and we got one, that, I don't know if it's an objection or just some questions, but I thought we should read that one aloud.
Yep. The other ones are all in the council packet and the public packet online, if anybody wants to read those. But I'll read this one that just came in most recently. It's from an email from Russ Rock. It says to the city council for the 4/18/2022 meeting. The council is scheduled to discuss vacating the stretch of what is left of the original US Highway 20 through Jessup. That is part of Jessup's history. We are aware that people who want to make a living often ignore history. We have not seen any concrete plans requiring the removal of Old 20. If this section is destroyed by the city and the investor that requested destroying it does not deliver what he promises, who controls the property the city abandons? Nothing has been said about the cost for removing this section or who's going to control it if vacated. What is the rationale for the next person to come and ask the city to abandon property? Russ and Marge Rock. Next, we also did receive a list of signatures of those opposed to vacating of South Street. There were 65 people that signed this. Is that it?
And that document will be available at City Hall if anybody wants to review it.
Then I'll open the floor for objections or comments from the public. If you wish to address the council, I'd ask that you please go to the podium and state your name and address.
I'm Victoria Karsten. I am from Independence. My address is 519 4th Avenue Northeast, Independence, Iowa 50644. No, I'm not from Jessup, but many of you know me. Some of you don't know me, and some of you have met me. Just something that I wanted to read quick before I got started. I wish I had realized that history is a perishable comedy. It disappears with time as memories fade and as loved ones pass on. I wish I had known that the most important aspect of history is preserving a record of the present for the future. I guess that's where a big concern of mine comes in because my son is from Jessup, his father's from Jessup, his grandparents own a business. I'm not against the business, but I do feel like there's more of a need for the road before it gets vacated. Shares had no problem with it. And that's kind of one of the questions that I have. If Shares had no problem, why is there a need for an expansion? I understand that the zoning and everything like that does not comply with current regulations, but that was known upon purchasing. So why ask for more land that isn't really needed right now? I just would like to see more growth from the businesses before the land gets vacated. And that's all I'm really asking for. I found it interesting that a lot of the stories that people told me were heartfelt stories. It is a road. I understand a lot of people don't care about that, but it is history. It does mean something to obviously a lot of people of Jessup and Buchanan County and the nation, really. I don't know if you've heard of the guy where I haven't found him yet, but he does a coal still. He goes on each side of the state. That highway was one time it is the longest highway in the nation. And I think it really needs preserved because why ruin something that people worked so hard on at one time? In 1929 is when they rebuilt that curve because it was known as the corner of accidents. So it was put there for a reason. I personally have visited that highway. I was part of a large youth group when I was younger, so it really is important to the youth in Iowa. And if the street is voted to not be vacated, I would love to see and be part of something that would flourish, because I think history for young people especially is important, because that's where you learn from. That's where a lot of people have learned their mistakes. What stories have your grandparents told you? Does anybody have anything that your grandparent told you? I learned this through anything. Come on. Nobody had grandparent stories growing up? Okay. Not very participating. I guess I'm just trying to be a voice for a lot of the people in this city. I've heard a lot of really sad stories, and a lot of people really don't want this to go. Some people are scared to come to council meetings, which I find interesting, because if you're not going to have a part of it, if you're not going to say your 2 cents, then nothing's going to get done. I'm just trying to be the little pebble thrown across the water to add a ripple effect for the people that actually care. And I really hope that the Jessup City Council can see that obviously people do care. And it's not anything against the business. And I'm not saying that it won't ever be vacated. I'm just saying, why can't it wait until there's more shown need for it? And I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dennis Emmy. I live at 1335 Fifth Street, Jessup, Iowa. I live in sight of the curve, and I don't want to see it leave. Because too, I was at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting last week, and they're showing that part of that is going to affect their properties, that if they take out the street, they're not going to have access to their properties. Who's going to pay for the replacement and access for them? It's not part of the property that the store wants. So is the city going to do it, or the property owner's going to have to do it? And yes, that curve was put in 1929 as a one-way entrance into town for the corner of accidents. It's been converted to a two-way street years later for access to shares. But I've got a question. You got to think about it, and anybody else that considers. They want to close that off. Okay, right now, there's 3 access points to that parking lot. 2 of them coming off 7th Street and 1 coming off 6th Street for the curve. You take out that curve, you're going to just have an entrance on 7th Street, an entrance on 6th Street, where you've also got the car wash, Casey's, Farmer State Bank. You're going to have U.S. Banks parking coming out of there. You're also going to have Cobblestone Courts all come out in that area then. Has a traffic impact study ever been done to show the pros and cons of this? I've never heard it mentioned. Yes, I'd like to see something done to the store too. I've heard that there's talk about 4 stores in the first comment from the representative T&T, or 3T. The planning and zoning, they were talking 6 to 8 businesses. Wanted to put a restaurant's interested in going on the west end of the store. Is the city going to have a noise ordinance if we're outside eating there, like Waterloo and Cedar Falls does for their restaurants? Because you're right off a residential area, apartment houses, or are the people going to have to sit there and listen to the music? I'm not against it. I'd like to see something in there. Because too, if they put a restaurant in on that end, that's the loading dock end currently. My question is, where they're going to be able to have a loading dock for the stores to unload their goods to put into the stores. I'm not picking on it. I just see things from a technical side, and I want to see everybody come out of this ahead of the game. And 2, today I just saw that it was put on Facebook about the upcoming burnout in Cruz. For years, the Cruz goes through that crossover at the real estate store and comes back up the curve. If you take out that curve, where are they going to turn around? You'll end up killing the Cruz. And that's coming up June 5th, according to the article. Thank you.
Jill Shemin, 1344 3rd Street. Tonight I stand to oppose vacating the curved section of Historic Highway 20. Yes, it is a historic part of roadway, but it is not just history. It is actively used by buses, the annual car cruise, and local traffic on a daily basis. There are several businesses and a home that will be gravely affected if you vacate this street. It will affect the property value, use, functionality, and access to the properties of Bank Iowa, TNA Transportation, Jessup Realty, and the home at 625 South Street. Another issue with vacating historic Highway 20 is the cost. Have you even estimated the cost associated with vacating this street? How can you make an informed decision without knowing an estimated cost? I know firsthand from serving on the city council that the scope of this project includes significant cost to the taxpayers. Proposing a project of this size after just announcing an increase to the tax levy, that's gutsy. Just a few of the costs associated with this project are engineering plans, excavation, surveying, grading, seeding, curb, gutter, and street repairs, attorney fees, rerouting water drainage, new property entrances, and all of this for what? For one property owner to increase their parcel. Other issues of this proposal are the terms and lack of information. This proposal was initiated once the old Jessup Food Mart was purchased on contract, meaning that 3T Investments is not the deed holder. Erber LLC, which is stated as being Christie and Dolan Burison, holds this property's ownership with 3T Investments as the contract purchaser with terms to their agreement. Has the city even contacted them? Has the city researched the terms of their contract? Is renovation and subleasing even allowed? Who will own this vacated street if the contract is not fulfilled? Overall, 3T Investments has not provided any site, building, or architectural plans to prove that they would require a larger parcel of land. They do not have anything to show how they will use this property at all. Why would the city remove a currently used historic city street for a project with no plans? If the city decides to vacate this roadway to sell to 3T Investments, will you vacate and sell other city streets? Thank you.
Hello, City Council and Mayor. I wanted to read a letter by lawyer Jeremy Hahn of Roberts and Eddy on behalf of TNA Transportation, Jessup Realty LLC, Alan and Terry Nye, which are value members of the community. And this is with respect to a proposal to vacate and rezone property recently purchased by 3T Investments. Please allow this letter to serve as a written notice of opposition as to the proposal to vacate and rezone. For your consideration, we ask you to contemplate the following. Jessup City Code, Section 137.04. No street, alley, portion thereof, or any public ground shall be vacated unless the council finds that 1. Public use, the street, alley, portion thereof, or any public ground proposed to be vacated is not needed for the use of the public, and therefore its maintenance at public expense is no longer justified. And 2, abutting property. The proposed vacation will not deny owners of property abutting on the street or alley reasonable access to their property. Further, when considering a rezoning application, Jessup City Code requires the following. The legal description and local address, if applicable, of the property to be rezoned. The present zoning classification and the zoning classification requested for the property. The existing use and proposed use of the property, the names and addresses of the owners of all properties within 200 feet of the property for which the change is requested, a statement of the reasons why the applicant feels the present zoning classification is no longer valid, F, a plat or sketch showing the locations, dimensions, and use of the applicant's property and all property within 200 feet thereof, including street, alleys, railroads, and other physical features, and G, the property owner's signature. When contemplating the proposed rezoning application submitted by 3T Investments LLC by owner Jason Thompson, there are numerous instances in which his application fails to meet the requirements of a properly submitted rezoning application. For instance, there's no legal description contemplated, which is certainly necessary given the schematic attached would present access issues for property owners. Further, the application does not contain the present zoning classification. It does not contain the existing use and proposed use of the property. It does not list the names nor addresses of the owners of all property within 200 feet of the property for which the change is requested, and it does not contain a statement of the reasons why the applicant feels the present zoning classification is no longer required. Despite the numerous deficiencies of the application that is being considered today, This issue becomes a much larger concern when applied to the valued members of your community. The Nyes have owned and operated businesses in this community for years. Further, they have been residents in the community. They have made this community their home. With the proposal that is set forth in consideration, should it be approved, the Nyes would lose access to their property. Should the proposal be accepted, this would require the Nyes to incur added expenses in creating a new entrance to their shop and home. Further, they would potentially risk losing a portion of the property to which they are the rightful owner. There would be additional concern with whom would bear responsibility for the cleanup to remove and repay what is left from the construction. We ask that you give consideration and contemplation as to the same. There is nothing in the proposed plan as to what the intended use for the property is said to be. This is critical as it would also propose potential inabilities of my client to reasonably access their property and the abutting road, a factor that is to be considered by section 137.04 of the city code. The road that has been proposed to be vacated is Historic Route 20. We believe it is in the town's best interest to maintain and preserve its historic monuments and public access ways. With zero proposed intention as to how the property is to be utilized, it is problematic at best to permit such a vacation or rezoning application and leave the potential use up to chance. We are requesting the Zoning Commission deny the request of 3T Investments as their application fails to meet the requirements as set forth in City Code. Further, we are requesting that the application be denied on the basis that Jessup City Code 137.04 would permit that a road, alley, or any public ground be vacated if the property is not needed for public use, or deny property owners the right to access their property, both of which come into question of the present scenario. We thank you for your consideration and contemplation as to the same. Very truly, Jeremy Hahn of Roberts and Eddy, PC.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris McGraw. I live at 308 5th Street in Independence, and I'm here tonight with some of my board members representing Buchanan County Tourism. We are here to add our voices to those that wish the roadway to be preserved. Our interest is strictly tourism and increasing visitors to your city. I'm sure you're aware that Historic Route 20 was founded roughly 3 years ago. Iowa was the first state in the nation to get on board, and our cities in Buchanan County all joined in wholeheartedly. With COVID coming along, there hasn't been opportunity nor funding to do some of the things that we choose or hope to do with Route 20, but now that things are loosening up a bit, those things are back on our radar and back on our list of goals. Our whole purpose in the county is to increase visitors to your town, to all the towns in our county, get them in the businesses, enjoy all your amenities, and we feel very strongly that this corner is a part of that. The state has come out with a passport stamping system you may be aware of for Route 20 that will encourage visitors to travel across the state, collect their passports in cities and towns that are on Route 20. And we're just here to voice our support for that. This is very last minute, if you don't mind, we received a letter this afternoon from Brian Farr. He is the president and founder of Historic Route 20, and I brought copies of that letter for all of you. So I would like to share those with you if I could. And I think that's what we came to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Name is Dennis Emmy, 1335 Fifth Street, Jessup, Iowa. One information that should be considered. In the late 70s, early 80s, when the 7th Street extension was done for storm sewer and closed off direct access for the curve, it was voted on by the city residents of Jessup by over 60% to keep the curve. Maybe it should be considered to put it to a citywide vote of the entire population of Jessup to see if they want to keep it or not, because they voted to keep it then. Something to consider.
Jason Thompson, 3T Investments, live at 814 First Street in Jessup here. So, a lot of it's about the history of the road, and I understand that. I mean, how many people remember, you know, that road used to continue out to Main Street? That got voted to take away. So, it wasn't a big history issue then. You know, a lot of you probably know my history in town. My grandparents owned probably half the businesses on Old Highway 20 back in the 60s and 70s. We're a big part of the community. So with asking to vacate this road, it's not about the building, it's not about the project there, it's about the little strip of grass. And going into this, I knew this was going to be a long and lengthy process. I'm not expecting if you vote yes today that I'm going to take ownership tomorrow. There's got to be a lot of plans in place, how the property is going to be divided. I don't want to, you know, make it so nobody can get into their home, nobody can get into their business, you know, for, you know, opposite of what you've seen on social media, you know, and all the misrumors. Yeah, there's a petition. I heard all about it on Saturday, people calling me up, you know, they're like, we just signed it to get the people out of our doorway. So, you know, that should take some looking into if that's going to be under consideration. So the two things that the city council needs to look at here, is the street needed for the public, and is it the maintenance at a public expense no longer justified? So I don't know if you guys have driven down that road lately and seen how bad it is, but is the deterioration of this road, when it needs to be fixed, that's going to be on the taxpayers. Is the city willing to fix up this road for tourism? Has the city seen any tourism dollars for this road? Has any tourism dollars come in? I'm looking to fill up this building with businesses. You know, ever since this came out publicly in February that I owned the building and I was going to be leasing it out, not a week goes by I don't have interested businesses from in town and out of town wanting to move here. So, like I said, this expansion is looking down the road for expanding on this building, you know, or building a new building, you know, for the future. That's why there are no plans in place, because I was told to ask the question, is this even a possibility? So yes, I'm not going to pay for architectural plans for something that may or may not happen. You know, I've reached out to the community. You know, the needs of, you know, we need a daycare center. I reached out to the daycare center committee. Said, hey, let's go in on this. I'll help with the remodel. We have the same architect. I've already spoken to him about it. There's grants available to put a daycare center in Jessup, you know, and still have a new one up by the school. I was turned down. You know, if a grocery store wanted to move into this building and they needed part of that road for extra parking spaces, would this be a discussion? Jessup needs a grocery store. If Jet F was going to be doing something with this property, would this be a discussion? Yeah, maybe not as much, you know, I'm small potatoes compared to everybody else. So, you know, the second point, would this deny owners access to the properties? Obviously, that all needs to be sorted out. You know, I really don't care about the other half of the road, you know, to the south towards 7th Street. It's about connecting the two properties to make it, you know, more convenient to add on in the future, because I see that there's a need for it. You know, like I said, I've got businesses coming at me all over the place that, yep, we'd like a chunk in that building, let us know. You know, there are no studies from the Tourism Bureau that, you know, it's actually bringing in tax dollars. You know, one car cruise a year, does that suffice? You know, how much maintenance is required for that road? The traffic study. So I put up cameras here for like the last 3 weeks. They're Monday through Friday, when school's in session, there's about 30 cars on that road. And probably half or a little over half are from 2:30 till 4 o'clock. And it's cars, and I've sent videos to the chief of police of, you know, cars speeding through, racing through those 2 stop signs just to beat a school bus turning left. So is it creating more of a hazardous turn than anything else? And when school's not in session, maybe 12 cars use that. And I've seen the same 7 cars every single day of just people who live on 7th Street, you know, cutting that corner, cutting through my parking lot, whatever. You know, and on Sunday, 4 people, 4 cars. And that's on average over 3 weeks. So, you know, is that road used? Yeah, a percentage of people. Is it gonna overburden 6th Street or Main Street if that road's not there? No. You know, a traffic jam in Jessup of 2 school buses turning left, to me, that's not a big a deal. So, you know, and as a developer in town here, I find it very odd that the Buchanan County Tourism will not support openly of doing this project, whether the road's there or not. They will not come out and say, hey, this development is good, we'd like to keep the road. The Buchanan County Economic Development, I reached out to them as well. They would not openly support this project, which the city pays a lot of money to, you know, have them bring businesses into town. So this is something as a council you need to look at. I'm trying to bring development to this town, and there is a need for it. So, you know, progress is gonna happen. I mean, one day this road's gonna need to be replaced, and they're gonna need to asphalt it or something. You know, you're just delaying the inevitable that at one day it's going to happen. And like I said, the tourism end of it, I understand it. There's no businesses on that road that attract tourism. So I guess we opened up, you know, the co-work Friday night, questions and answers. A couple people showed up. That was it. You know, we were trying to squash all the rumors, come up and ask me. You know, I've reached out to council if they had any questions. Nobody's asked me any questions. I've been an open book of anybody who has asked me anything about that building. No, I will not give you tenants' names who have approached us. That's not my business to tell them, you know, tell the public when they're gonna be opening or moving. You know, I'm just a property owner. That's their business when they wanna come public with, you know, them moving and them opening up. So yes, I'm not gonna share individual companies' information. That's not mine to share. But like I said, if anybody has any questions, I'm free and available. But the council needs to take in consideration those 2 things. Is the road useful? And, you know, justify the maintenance of the road? And is it gonna deny access of the public?
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council?
Kathy Sabetka, 1345 First Street. Vacating a street that is used by our town would be a mistake. Not only is it historic, it is the only way you can access 625 South Street. Why does the promotion of one business need to come at the cost of a city street and property access? Why do we even need to address this when there are no plans or tenants committed to the old grocery store? I would hope at the very least you have been provided a business plan that, and that we are not voting on vacating a street based on promises. How are we to know this wouldn't come to have the same outcome as the apartments on Prospect? Vacating this road will come at an expense. If this is passed, the owners of 625 South Street would have to put in a new driveway, potentially changing how that property can be used. It was bought and used for semis, and if a driveway is changed, it limits and/or denies accessibility.
This was owned long before the current idea was proposed. I support growth in Jessup, and a city street does not and will not prevent growth. Vote no on vacating the street.
Okay, my name's Alan Nye. Live at 2192 Carter Avenue, Jessup, Iowa. Okay, I wasn't planning on getting up and saying anything. I am the owner of the property across the street there from the grocery store. I bring my semi in and out of there frequently. That was the purpose we bought it. We bought it because I have a truck. The shop works great. I can pull the truck in there. It's easy to come in, go up that diagonal road. I can back right up in there. They take that out. The only way I'm gonna get that truck in there is off of 7th Street. And to back a tractor and trailer in off of a city street, that's gonna take a really wide driveway. And there's a culvert, water drain on the north side and on the south side of where that driveway would have to go. And that would take a lot of planning to get that done. We've owned the property for roughly 8 years, and we've kept it up. Yeah, the street, I haven't seen any maintenance done on the street probably since the time we've been there. So I don't think the city's spent a whole lot on the road. But we do use it, and there is cars that do use it, and I don't think we should vacate it. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Blue Seneca, 1345 First Street. You know, not only the historical significance, but I don't know, it just all seems so backwards to me. I guess if the footprint of this property was the determining factor the whole time, personally, I would have checked into that before I purchased the property. You know, there's nothing wrong with asking for it after the fact, but there again, maybe, you know, get all the property owners immediately instead of hear from a third party and then wanting to contact them. You know, I'd be kind of not real happy with that either. And, you know, I wish the map was up here. You know, if you don't care about the south part, why do you have the line drawn within feet of the house? You know, who's to say these businesses come in here, there's not going to be extra vehicles that they own? Well, like anybody, they're going to go park them in the farthest corner of the parking lot. Then you got cars looking right out your front window, you know. And kind of like Al said there, you know, you pull in there with a semi, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe the people that own the grocery store own a semi. You're not going to get that backed in there. No, you're not denying access, but, you know, that's going to be a real tough job. It ain't going to happen. That's what that property was purchased for. So I guess, you know, it just really seems backwards. And if you open that to one person, the next time it happens, how do you deny that? You know, we were in for a variance last year for a totally different subject. But I, you know, very well remember what was told to us by the city attorney, or recommended to the board, I should say. She says, I feel if you do this for one person, what's to say the next person's not going to want it? And then how do you justify telling them no? So I guess that's kind of where I stand on it. It seems to me like, you know, had the property owners been talked to before this started, had the meeting been held across the street before this started, a lot of this probably could have been avoided. You know, it seems to me nobody knew about it, you know, when these meetings were started. Somehow the cat got out of the bag. So now we got this big mess. So, you know, if this is this poorly planned up to this point, what's the rest of this project going to be? You know, I mean, and also as far as a business plan, you know, if you're doing what you want with the property you already got, it's none of our business. But if you're asking the city to, you know, vacate streets, deal with curb and gutter, stuff like that, I feel that a business plan is a very feasible thing to ask for. You know, maybe they got the money in the bank, who knows, who cares? But no bank or investor is going to commit to that without a business plan. Why should the city? You know, if you can't provide names of who wants to come in there, you know, I get it, I understand. But I can sit here all day and tell you I got 20 businesses coming in somewhere. You gonna take my word for it just because I say it's true? We don't know. So I guess you gotta take the risk. You either gotta provide the proof or deal with the consequence of, you know, dealing with the property you've got. So I guess that's all I got.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. The public hearing is now closed. Is there any discussion from the city council?
I'd make a couple comments, I guess. There's obviously a lot of people that don't want to see that street removed, and I understand that. Not being born and raised here probably doesn't mean as much to me as it does to some people, but I get it. The biggest problem I have is there is no plan. And I feel like the city and the residents that have property next to that, if the city was to do that, that we should not, the city or any of those residents should have to spend a dime to do it. That should all be on the person that wants to make that change. And I just think that it's gonna be very, very expensive to do that, because it's all gonna have to be done by an engineer and all that. And I want nothing more than something to be in that building. I agree with everything everybody said, that it's an eyesore. We need something in there. For that reason, I really hate to not support this project. But I just don't feel at this point I've got enough information to back it. And I think there's enough opposition that weighs on my thoughts too.
What was discussed at our first meeting when this request came to the city council was that the cost of whatever it took to replace those driveways, move the curb, that would all be paid for by the sale of this street. So there would be no effect to the taxpayers or the property owners there. That would all be covered under this agreement.
But we don't have any numbers for that.
Right.
I mean, you know, is that $100,000? Is it 200,000? I don't know. I just don't think at this point, in my mind, I've got near enough information to change anything at this point.
Outside of what you just said, Chris, what exactly would be the procedure?
To vacate the street?
Yeah, I mean, outside of what's happening tonight, what else has to happen so that we can accommodate Al with a different driveway?
We would,
you know, basically everything that was brought up tonight, which was great.
right.
But there's issues there that we gotta take care of and accommodate. So let's just say, yep, we pass this thing and life goes on, then what happens? What would have to happen? What needs to happen?
My recommendation would be to not pass it until we decide how the property is gonna be divided, who's gonna, because we're gonna have to split up part of that street to give,
Okay,
keep
so what
everybody
Blue
access.
talked about is exactly right. We're backwards. G-rated here. We're backwards.
Right. Unless it's a hard no from the council that no, we're never gonna vacate this street, then there's no use getting the engineer involved, spending money to figure out cost, and
But we're not gonna spend any money.
if we vacate it though and it doesn't end up selling, then we will.
Yeah, all right. I got that. But even to do the engineering work, it shouldn't be our cost, because we're not requesting it.
As long as we end up selling the property in the end. So I think that all needs to be,
Okay, all right, so.
that's why I would not
Whether it
recommend
passes-
vacating
okay,
it
so
tonight.
we don't, okay, so we table it, and so how do we move this situation forward so that everybody can be heard? I mean, do we gotta go to the people that own the apartment complex up on Sixth Street and say, hey, your sidewalk's gotta get straightened out? And then we go to Bank Iowa and say, your driveway's gotta be extended?
Yep.
And then we gotta put in different driveways, curbs and gutters along there. We run curb and gutter all the way down to Terry's office. Well, it's already there, I guess. And then we have to dress up Al's property so that he has access to it.
Right.
And then, once that's all done, at no cost to the city, outside of having the conversations or starting the conversation or hosting the conversation, then we could maybe move forward with this, and our issue is gonna be the tourism aspect of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would think we want to get that all worked out before we take
That's-
action to
that's
vacate.
right.
Because
That's
once we
what- that's-
vacate it,
that's what I meant
it's
to
no
say.
longer a
Yeah,
street.
that's what I meant to say, yeah.
If there's no sentiment.
Like Blue said, we hit it right on the head. We're backwards.
Right, if there's no sentiment to vacate it because of reasons unrelated to a lack of plan, then you would want to know that tonight, right? Because why would anybody want to invest their time evaluating from an engineering perspective? So if the general sentiment is we wouldn't be interested in this under any circumstances, then you wouldn't want to table it. It would fail for lack of a motion.
But going forward in the future, the only way we would look at it is if everybody that had an
Correct.
interest in this got together, sat down, and said, da-da-da-da-da-da, and we have a workable plan, which is what I think we're kind of all after, for lack of better words.
Nothing prevents somebody from reapplying
Oh, sure.
for a vacation of a street
Yep.
with an additional plan or
Yeah.
something done 6 months to a year from now.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Nothing prevents that application. There's no statutory thing that says once this has failed, it can't be applied for again. It could be.
So the letter that was read to us, the attorney brought up certain points that we're not even complying with our own rules, ordinances. Is that
He
another area
cited-
we need to look into to
I think what-
change and address?
No, what he was highlighting was that your ordinances require that if you're going to vacate, you have to make a finding that it's not needed for the use of the public.
Okay.
That has to be found in your ordinance. I mean, you have to identify that you as a group are making a finding that this street is no longer of any benefited use to the public.
I think it was the paperwork being filled out incorrectly.
So
That's what he's asking.
I thought that was, I think that was.
That was
a
on the
different- That was
rezoning.
on a rezone. That was a different issue. That wasn't this one.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was
that's okay.
with him.
Yeah, that's okay. So, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
My question's answered. Thanks.
I don't want to speak for the whole council, but I don't think anybody is ready to move forward this tonight. I think what we're looking for from the council is this at all a possibility? Is it worth looking into further? Or is it just gonna be a hard no?
We got a room full of people saying no, and one wanting it, so that's how I'm gonna vote.
My problem with it is, when you look at that, and all the work that's gonna have to be done to change that, that's an expensive project. I mean, you're not gonna do that for $20,000-$30,000. When you start extending all those driveways, and where are you gonna put the new street? And I don't know where these, well, I guess on here I can see the property line, but if you look, where's that new street gonna go? If it's gonna go straight east and west from Sixth and Seventh, you're gonna have a big chunk of property down here. You're gonna cut that parking lot in half.
The proposal
what's
is to
there.
eliminate that curved street
Yeah, I understand that.
and not have a cross street in there.
But how are you gonna get access to those places then? When you do that?
They all have access off either Sixth or Seventh Street.
Yeah, but not very handy. Not very good, no,
With a portion of the curved street, they would.
yeah.
Hypothetically, but the doesn't have access on Seventh
Again,
Street.
another thing that's gotta get worked out
Yes.
at the end of the day.
But at the end of, my point is, this is gonna be an expensive project. And if you told that expense on top of the building and all that, does it now become economically feasible? And that's my concern too.
I've got one comment, let alone the finances to try and tear up everything, replace everything, curb and gutter and everything. I'm a sentimental history buff, and I would hate to see any part of this street tore up into rubble, dumped into a dump truck and hauled to a landfill. That's history that's sitting there. And I just, that just doesn't sit with me.
I'd make one more point, just to make it. That street is gonna need some repairs. It's gonna need some work, because I've drove on it several times in the last 3 weeks, just looking things over. And if there's that much sentiment for this street, maybe there's a way we can get some help from somebody to help redo that street and put it back to the way it was. Because it's not the way it was now, it's kind of a mess, but that's a topic for another day also.
So if we vote no tonight, it can be brought back.
Right, if it can either fail for, so I believe it's on the agenda now as an ordinance vacating it. If no one makes a motion to propose that ordinance, the application fails for lack of a motion. P and Z already recommended no, so it's already gone through its P and Z process. So procedurally, it's to you all for a decision now. So if that decision, if it fails for lack of a motion, then it fails. It's a dead issue. It can be reapplied for in the future.
Any other comments from the council? Then I'll ask, do we have a motion for the first reading of an ordinance regarding vacating South Street between Sixth Street and Seventh Street? Would anyone like to make that motion? And the first reading of the ordinance will die for a lack of motion. We will skip second, waiving second and third and final adoption then. And then we'll move on to citizens' input on the council agenda. If anyone would like to address the council regarding a different topic, I invite you to go up to the podium. We'll move on to departmental reports.
We should give John Powers a gold star.
I'll
He's
tell
been
them
busy,
that.
hasn't he?
It's nice, huh?
I'll note that.
It's nice to see
Just a
all
small
that.
one though, not a very big one. Just a small
Oh,
one.
we gotta start someplace. It's nice to see everything that's happening here.
Yeah.
Department heads have anything to add?
Wait a minute, are they even here?
There too.
We'll move on to new business. We have a repair estimate from Northway Well and Pump for well number 4.
So moved.
Do you wanna know?
I read it, so we'll go ahead. You know, what do you wanna do? We can have a discussion after we get done. I don't care.
So- This is the one by the fire station. So-
Emergency services.
That's it, yeah, sorry. So we had well 4, the pump went down, they pulled it, found some cavitation in the pump, it needs to be replaced. While we have it out, they're also recommending that we acidize and, clean the well. That's an additional 28,000. The first 30,000, we should be able to turn into insurance, hopefully, and that will cover all of that except for the deductible, but the city will have to pay the extra, because that is not part of the insurance claim to do the second part. But I would recommend that we do both of them.
And that's the reason why it's split out into 2 invoices or letters or whatever, because one is insurable and the other is not.
You still want to make a motion on that, Todd?
Again.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Shares?
Yes.
Ralston?
Yep.
Wright?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
That motion passes. And then we have a quote to purchase a fire hydrant. This is from Utility Equipment. They're actually kind of hard to find right now, but they happen to have one in stock, and Mike has one that's leaking and needs to be replaced, so they would like to purchase this fire hydrant from Utility Equipment, and the city will install it.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
It'll be higher next year,
Probably next week.
next week, yeah, yeah.
Get a second on that.
Yes.
That'll be a roll call vote?
Bell?
Yes.
Ralston?
Yep.
Wright?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Shares?
Yes.
That motion passes. And we have a resolution approving payment for the wastewater treatment plant improvements project. This is for $506,123.90.
Is this our first draw on our loan?
Yep. This will be the cheap one.
I'd recommend you pay it.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? That'll be a roll call vote?
Ralston?
Yep.
Shares?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
That motion passes. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. We're adjourned at 7:56.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Messing around, looking at the street, obviously. And so here's where it was.
Right.
Right on the